Hey there, viewers. So apparently, Beyonce's daughter might have just confirmed the most whispered about file on the internet. Not with a leak, but with a poem. No passwords, no drama, just a quiet moment that sent fans into full decoding mode. So, what's really inside the so-called secret pen drive? Let's talk about it. Chapter 1. The folder that wasn't there yesterday. I didn't even want to go. That's the part that keeps getting to me. I almost didn't check my email that night. I had just finished a long day of editing audio logs for a community doc series. Boring stuff like trimming ums and lining up subtitles. And all I wanted to do was lie on the floor and eat cereal out of the box. But my student inbox had this one weird subject line. Family Systems, invitation to closed exhibit preview. It looked like another one of those pop-up gallery events that our media school was always plugging. I was ready to delete it until I scrolled down and saw something strange in the RSVP confirmation. At the very bottom, under a tiny line that said confirmation code, temporary access, 1 of 50, there was a short string of characters that felt like it didn't belong. Attached, /starling/blue/private/US. That's exactly how it was written, with slashes like a file path. I had no clue what that meant. No one did. But I didn't think much of it then. I just clicked yes, got the calendar invite, and went back to zoning out. The next evening, the museum space was dim and echoey and smelled like old paint. The event was hosted in this little side wing of the cultural center where they store all the multimedia archives, VHS tapes, home videos, printed photos, and even old camcorders that still worked. Everything was set up like a rotating exhibit for something called Family Statements about Legacy, but there was a buzz in the air that didn't match the vibe. There weren't a lot of us there. Maybe 20 or 30 people, most of them grad students and a few high school kids from a gifted arts program. I recognized 1 or 2 faces from campus. Everyone was awkwardly hovering around a snack table filled with plain hummus and weird sparkling water flavors. The walls had big prints of family trees laid out like subway maps, only instead of birth and death dates, they had timestamps, file types, and camera brands. Some said things like beta tape 1997/Canon/3440/garage birthday. Then the curator came in, tall, older woman in all black, kind of dramatic but in a way that made you pay attention. She stepped up to a small podium and started talking about how art is organization. She said this exhibit was about not just what families save, but how they save it. What gets uploaded, what stays on thumb drives, what never leaves the drawer. The way she said thumb drives made a few people glance at each other. It was subtle, but I noticed. They talked about a few special contributions from local artists, and then, without making a big announcement, she mentioned that Beyonce's daughter had submitted a small piece. She called her B, no last name, no photos, just B. And apparently her work was included in what she called the student archive rotation. I think everyone expected it to be a poem or maybe a video clip. We were invited to browse freely. No photos, no recordings. Just look, reflect, and leave. The main display was a series of touchscreen kiosks arranged in a half circle. They looked like sleek ATM machines, each with a headset and a small projector casting faint images onto white tile. I tapped through one near the corner and saw folders with labels like Rehearsals _2005 and Family Voicemail _2037. You could click on them and listen to snippets. Nothing invasive, just audio of someone singing in a kitchen or kids talking over each other during a birthday party. It was sweet, but then something strange happened. Tapped to go back to the main menu, and for maybe 2 seconds, maybe less, I saw a folder flash at the top of the screen. It was grayed out, like it wasn't clickable, and had a tiny lock icon next to it. The label said blue_private. The whole thing disappeared as the screen refreshed. I tapped back and forth trying to find it again. Nothing. Next to me, two girls were whispering. One of them said, "Is that the folder people were talking about?" The other said, "I heard it's like not even real, just an art piece or something, but the file matches." I didn't want to interrupt, but I leaned a little closer. The first girl looked up and said, "It's the pen drive thing, right? From the group chat?" Then they noticed me listening and they went quiet. I had no idea what they were talking about. I hadn't seen anything in my school's group chats about a pen drive. A few minutes later, everyone started gathering near the front again. That's when she walked in. She was taller than I expected, confident but in a quiet way. No entourage, no fanfare, just her and a single notepad. She didn't smile much, but she didn't seem cold either. More like calm, like she didn't need to perform. She stepped onto a low platform and said just a few words, something about the right to be unfinished. How artists have drafts they don't show. How sometimes what you don't say is more important than what you do. She said, "We live in layers, and some of them aren't meant to be flattened." She never mentioned a pen drive. But behind her, on the screen, a slide changed. It was a simple list. Sketches, voice notes, text fragments, scans, USB halos. That last line flickered. I'm not imagining that. It blinked once and then faded, like a slide that hadn't been scrubbed clean. Before I could think too hard about it, my phone buzzed. It was a message from a username I didn't recognize. Just one sentence. "Ask about Starlene." No explanation, no context. I looked around, but no one else seemed to be checking their phones. When I looked back at the kiosk screen, something had changed. A new folder had appeared, not locked, just sitting there like any other file. It said, "Hallo Tags." Edit. Inside were a bunch of thumbnails, small, boring-looking photos, a paint palette, a close-up of a metronome, a subway tile wall. Nothing dramatic, but the file names were weird. Each one had a suffix like palette_7F-A9 or wall_2C-14. They didn't look like normal file numbers. They looked like codes. Girl next to me said, "It's checksum formatting." I must have looked confused because she added, "People use it to track file versions or to watermark stuff without making it obvious." That's when someone else nearby rolled their eyes and said, "This is so gate-kept. Like, either show us the real thing or don't. Why even invite us?" They grabbed their bag and walked out. A few others started pulling out their phones. By the time I stepped outside for some air, I saw the first story post go up. A blurry photo of the kiosk with the caption, "If you know, you know." I still wasn't sure I did. I walked home thinking it was probably nothing, a weird glitch, a curated mystery that was meant to tease. But then my friend Mia sent me a link to a fan account thread that had already started compiling the fallen names. They were mapping the checksum codes to rehearsal schedules, album credits, even contract milestones from B's mom's old tours. The theory was that these were file ghosts, labels from old, unreleased projects that had been quietly archived. The thread was 20 slides long. Some of it was definitely reaching, but one part stuck with me. Someone claimed that 7F-A9 matched the file trail of a lighting cue from the second leg of the Renaissance tour, the part of the show that was rumored to have been pulled last minute after the Dubai backlash. I don't know if any of that is true. I don't even know if it matters. But the folder wasn't there when we arrived. And then it was. And maybe, just maybe, that one flickering word, "Halos," wasn't a mistake. Chapter 2. Halotax and the Grammar of Secrets. I'm not a tech person. I know how to crop a photo and restart my laptop when it freezes, but That's about it. So the fact that I spent 2 straight nights reading about checksums and watermark pulses still makes me laugh a little. This was never supposed to be my thing. I didn't grow up coding or editing or thinking about how files get stored or labeled. I was just trying to finish my internship. But after that night at the exhibit, something about the way those flaw looked, those little combinations of words and numbers, got under my skin. Halo_tags, palette _7, F-A9, wall _2C-14. It wasn't even what the files showed. The photos themselves were dull, almost boring. A paint palette, a wall, a close-up of a kitchen timer. But those weird tags, they felt like they were pointing to something. Not hiding something, but hinting at it. Like the name of the file mattered more than the content. I couldn't explain why it felt so specific, so deliberate. I went home and pulled out my old laptop, the one I barely use unless my main one's charging. I started listing every file I could remember seeing in that folder. I opened a blank document and typed the labels out one by one. Every time I looked at them, they stopped feeling like file names and started feeling like sentences. Broken ones. Half a language I didn't speak. By 2 in the morning, I was staring at the words Halo tags, as grammar written in bold at the top of the page. I don't know why I wrote that, but I did. A few hours later, I found myself scrolling through this weird sub-page on a fan-run Discord server. It was one of those locked channels that said registered media only, but someone had posted screenshots from inside. And there it was again, blue_private, listed next to 2 other drive names in what looked like a Finder window. ZC_tour_assets_v4, PR_heatmap, blue_private. The screenshot didn't have a source. Some people said it was real, others said it was just fan art or a fake mock-up. No one could agree. The whole thread was full of arguing. Someone pointed out that if those were real drives, then blue_private could be anything, from a kid's sketchbook backup to a tour folder disguised under a harmless name. Another person swore that PR_heatmap referred to a leak response strategy used during the Renaissance rollout. That part made sense to me. I remembered when that album leaked early and Beyonce posted that message thanking fans for their love and protection. It always stood out to me, the way she emphasized the word protection, like it wasn't just about the music, it was about guarding something more personal. But even with all the fan theories, nothing really explained what halotags meant. So I went looking again. Turns out halotags are a real thing in biology. They're used to tag proteins in a way that makes them easier to track and experiment. I don't know if that's what B meant, but it kind of fit. These Fa feelings felt like markers, little glowing labels to help follow something invisible. I started to notice a pattern. Each file name in the folder had 2 parts, a mood word and a hex code. The words were soft, almost fragile. Glass, amber, lacquer, cable, haze, and the codes, they looked like checksums. I had to look that up. A checksum is like a fingerprint for a file. It helps verify that nothing's been tampered with. One person on Reddit explained it like this: if you change even 1 pixel in a photo, the checksum changes completely. That made me think of something I'd overheard once, years ago, during a work-study shift backstage at a music venue. Someone had said that major artists use special watermarks in their early rehearsal files, little blips of audio that repeat at exact intervals. If a file leaks, they can trace which version it was and who had access to it. I went back to the Discord thread and searched for the word watermark. That's when I found it. A user had posted about a rumored pulse, an audio watermark that played every 11 seconds in certain temporersal stems. Not loud, just a soft ping layered under the track. Supposedly, it was unique to each version sent out during early testing phases. Some people in the thread said it was nonsense. Others said they'd heard it and had spectrograms to prove it. One person posted a blurry graph that looked like a jagged heartbeat. 11 seconds, not 10, not 12. Something about that made it feel more real. I wasn't sure if any of this connected back to B or her pen drive or whatever blue_private actually was, but it was all starting to form a kind of pattern. Not a clear one, more like static that sometimes lined up to form shapes. I pulled up one of the screenshots someone had posted earlier, the fake Finder window. I looked again at those 3 drives. BC_tour_assets_V4. PR_#blue_private. They felt too coordinated to be fake, or maybe that was just me wanting them to be real. I stared at them so long my eyes started to blur. I imagined what each one held. The tour assets folder with stage diagrams, camera angles, lighting cues. The PR folder with mood boards, sentiment trackers, spreadsheets of influencer activity. And the last one, the private one. The one that maybe didn't belong to the team, the one that felt personal. That's when I remembered something I had almost forgotten. Months ago, a small entertainment blog had posted a blurry video from backstage during a concert overseas. It had shown B walking beside her mom, pointing toward the floor markings on the stage. You could barely hear her voice, but the blog had captioned it as her giving note-spacing feedback. Most people ignored the clip, but now, watching it again, it felt different. She was involved. Not just as a daughter, but as a contributor. Maybe not officially, but enough to care how things were presented, enough to protect certain things from being seen. That thought made me stop and wonder, what if the Halo tags weren't hiding songs or scandalous footage, but drafts, experiments, things never meant for stage lights? And what if the way they were labeled, those soft words and hard codes, was how she made sense of it all, like organizing feelings into folders, not to be shared, but just to keep track of what parts of herself were still growing. I couldn't shake it. It made sense, in a quiet kind of way, that someone raised around cameras and chaos might want to build a system for marking what stays private. A grammar of secrets, not lies, just distance, layers. I started reading more about NDAs. Not the celebrity gossip kind, but the real ones. The kind that artists and their teams use to protect drafts, works in progress, unreleased ideas. Some contracts specify no discussion of files, index systems, or access points. One even had a clause forbidding descriptive tagging of non-public drives. It sounded like legal language invented for exactly this type of world. That made me think about something else I hadn't considered. Cloud storage is easier, faster, and safer in most ways, but not all. If you're trying to move something quickly between team members, or if you want it to stay offline entirely, a USB still wins. No automatic backups, no metadata leakage. Just plug in, copy, unplug. Physical, traceable only by human hands. Until someone forgets to label it, or loses it, or renames it in a way that doesn't seem important, until it does. By midnight, I was back on Discord. The argument about the screenshot had flared up again. One new user posted what they claimed was a checksum calendar, a list of all the codes from the Halo tags folder, matched to dates. They had colored boxes, highlighted entries, and a header that said File Mood Index, Chronos. Only none of the dates matched anything from the public tour schedule. Not one. The shows, the rehearsals, the media appearances, they were all on different days. The calendar had a rhythm, but it wasn't synced to the public timeline. It was synced to something else, something internal. Someone commented, "It's not a tour log, it's a feeling map." That was the last thing I read before my screen went dark. I sat there in the dark for a long time. Not scared, just still. It hit me then that I wasn't looking at a scandal or a leak or even a mistake. I was looking at someone's attempt to keep track of the pieces of themselves they weren't ready to show yet. And now, somehow, the world was trying to open it all. Chapter 3. The Atlanta Intercept. The first thing I saw that morning was the push alert. I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced down, expecting something boring, another group message from my internship coordinator or some news headline I'd ignore. But the words on the lock screen made me stop mid-rinse. Break. Arrest made in theft of Beyonce crew vehicle. Stolen items include laptops, multiple USB drives. I spit the toothpaste out before I could choke on it. My hands were still wet when I unlocked my phone. At first I thought it had to be fake, another clickbait story using her name for attention. But it wasn't a gossip blog. It was from a local Atlanta news station, the kind that usually covers school board meetings and highway accidents. I tapped the link. The article was short and straightforward. A crew vehicle associated with Beyonce's tour had been broken into 2 nights earlier. 2 laptops and 5 USB drives were reportedly taken from a locked compartment. The suspect, a 27-year-old man whose name was being withheld pending investigation, had already been taken into custody. According to the report, not all of the stolen materials were recovered. That was the line that stuck with me. Not all. It didn't take long for Stan accounts to find the story. Within hours it was trending across multiple platforms. Hashtags like crew drive heist and USB gate climbing up the charts. At first, people were just reposting the article with shock and anger. But then, like always, speculation took over. Some fans immediately jumped to Beyonce's defense. They emphasized that the stolen drives were likely technical files, lighting cues, set lists, maybe rehearsal footage, nothing personal. Others weren't so sure. I watched in real time as the idea started to take shape. What if one of those drives was the same secret pen drive people had been whispering about since the exhibit? To be clear, there was no actual evidence of that. None. The news never mentioned a folder labeled blue_private. The theft happened days before the exhibit even opened. But that didn't stop people from connecting dots. That's the thing about internet rumors. They don't need clean lines. They just need enough noise for a pattern to appear. A thread popped up that same afternoon, posted by an account I'd seen before. It was one of those half-tech, half-fan pages run by someone who clearly knew their way around audio software, but also treated celebrity projects like spy missions. The thread was titled "What They Don't Want You to See, The Watermark War Files," and opened with a dramatic claim. At least one of the stolen USBs contained geotagged rehearsal stems with embedded watermark intervals set to 11 seconds. The drive was nicknamed REH_aux_B and functioned as a decoy under standard file protocol. Decoy. That word made me pause. I remembered back to chapter 1 of this whole story, when I'd seen that folder flicker across the kiosk screen, labeled blue_private, with that tiny lock icon, and then the Halo tags folder, with full names like palette_7, F-A9. Every layer of the system had felt quiet, disguised, safe. Now here was a whole other story about camouflage. Rehearse_aux_B. That B at the end did too much work for too many people. Within minutes, comments were already calling it a confirmation. "That's her folder," someone wrote, as if one letter proved anything. "They renamed it for transport, come on." Others pushed back. Another account responded, "Y'all are wild. There's no connection. The article literally says nothing about her. Stop making everything about one person." The debate spiraled out. Some people said the whole leak story was fake, a way to generate buzz. Others said this proved why stars still used physical drives, because cloud storage could be hacked. A few pointed out that USBs are just plain faster when you're on tour and have to copy files between systems. One user went viral with a post that read, "This is why we can't have nice things. You scream privacy until it's a USB, then you scream for leaks." That one hit me hard. I thought about the Halo tags folder again. How none of it was really that interesting, at least not on the surface. Paint palettes, timers, subway tiles. But how much meaning had been poured into just those folios? And now here was the world spinning a story around 5 USBs that were probably just packed with backup lighting diagrams and MIDI files. Still, I couldn't shake the sense that something about RE_aux_B sounded deliberate. Not in a conspiracy way, more like an inside joke, like someone labeling a drive with the least interesting name possible, because that's how you keep it safe. I wanted answers, not from Twitter threads or Discord arguments, real answers. So I went looking. The police department that handled the case had a public records portal. I searched for the incident using whatever keywords I could think of: tour vehicle, USB theft, Beyonce, Atlanta, but nothing came up. I finally found a generic contact email for their records division and sent a formal request referencing the article and asking for any available report summary. Then I waited and waited. 3 days went by. No reply. Then, finally, a short message landed in my inbox. "Thank you for your inquiry. Due to the ongoing nature of the investigation and the sensitive nature of the materials involved, no public report is available at this time. You may check back after the conclusion of the case." That was it. No timeline, no case number, just a soft wall of nothing. And in that space between what was reported and what wasn't, rumors started to grow. Again, one of the fan pages I'd been watching started to post updates styled like intelligence briefings. Fake, but eerily convincing. They listed the 5 stolen drives as if they had access to the itemized evidence log. Things like CC__/show_final. Bond. Autopilot would air on May 3_V3. REH_aux_B PR_video_north UNAS_drive_5. It was total fiction, but people treated it like gospel. They even built out a theory that assigned_drive_5 was an unmarked copy of the pen drive seen in the blue_private screenshot. That's when I realized how badly people wanted there to be a connection, even if there wasn't one. Because if there was, then everything they'd speculated about B became retroactively true. But the more I watched, the more I started to notice the real mystery wasn't in what got stolen. It was in how people were trying to decode the system. Everyone wanted a pattern. Everyone wanted to find the key that unlocked the next clue. That's when I got another message. Same anonymous account as before, just one sentence. "Starling isn't a code name, it's a sorting rule." I stared at the words, not sure what they meant. Then another message came in, like a follow-up. "Start with S, then jump 3 letters, again and again." I opened my notebook where I'd written down the folder paths from the exhibit. /starling/blue/private/USB. I wrote out the alphabet, started on S, jumped 3 letters forward. S, then V, then Y, then B, then E. SVYBIBEA. That felt like something. Or maybe nothing. I tried it again, starting from different letters. Clues, flock, hello. Now I was just making up words, but something about it stuck. I wrote them down in big letters and pinned them to my bedroom wall with string, like I was in some detective movie. Clues. What kind of artist builds a file system that moves like that? And more importantly, why? That night, still buzzing from the message, I searched for visual art projects linked to B that had used those words. Not much turned up. But buried deep in a school newsletter from 2 years ago, I found a mention of an experimental classroom project that invited students to build emotion-Xed visual collections. The student example listed in the article? A Pinterest board titled Floke/Clues/Halo Relish Halo. I couldn't access it. The board was private, but the description was still visible. It said, "Or when memory doesn't sort itself cleanly, this is how I try." That was the last thing I saw before logging off. No leaks, no files, no pen drive. Just someone trying to keep track of what mattered. And maybe trying to do it quietly. Chapter 4. The Gallery of Almosts. The pop-up wasn't advertised. That's how I knew it would be worth going to. No posters, no QR codes, no splashy hashtags. Just a small blip in the arts program's internal bulletin. Gallery B, Work in Progress Showcase, closed viewing, invite only. Below that, in smaller gray text, featuring installations from selected participants in the Emerging Voices residency. No names, no fanfare. But when I asked around, someone from my documentary crew who also worked part-time at the gallery whispered she has a piece in it. She, of course, being B. I didn't even bother RSVPing. I just showed up with my phone in my jacket, my tiny Canon in my tote, and the stupid hope that I might be able to film a few seconds of B-roll before getting shooed away. But when I got there, the security guard outside looked me over once, then nodded. No clipboard. No questions. Inside, the space was silent in the way that makes you feel like sound itself is an intrusion. The lights were low, but soft white bulbs lined each corner like stage markers. No music, no opening speech, just a single typed sign by the door that said, "This exhibit explores drafts, some finished, some not. Look, but don't collect." There were maybe 12 pieces total, spread out unevenly around the room, like they were giving each other space to breathe. Paper collages pinned to cork, ink drawings on acetate, a short video loop showing empty rehearsal chairs dissolving into fog. One sound installation, one sculpture, and in the far corner, a clear acrylic plinth sealed shut with tiny steel screws, like a display case at a science museum. It held nothing, or that's what I thought at first. But if you leaned close, and I did, so close my breath fogged the plastic, you could see the silhouette of a small rectangular object pressed into the foam lining. A USB drive. Its outline was clean, like someone had pressed it in carefully, removed it, and left only the absence behind. Etched into the acrylic base was a single engraved sentence. Address deserved rooms. That was all. No title, no label. Just a small white card taped to the floor in front of the plinth, printed in lowercase. Allotex, in progress. I didn't breathe for a second, not because I thought I'd found some secret, but because it was so obviously not a secret. It was the opposite. The silence of it made you look harder. The emptiness made you think more. It was designed to make you stare. I turned my camera on, slowly. No red light, no click. Just let it run from waist level while I drifted sideways to the next piece. That's when I heard it. A soft click, then another, then silence, then click, click. The pattern didn't make sense at first. It wasn't steady, not a beat, not a rhythm, but eventually it started again. A low wooden metronome sound playing from a speaker near the ceiling. Click, pause, click, click, long pause, click. It wasn't random. I timed it using the stopwatch app on my phone. The clicks didn't repeat in a simple loop, but after about a minute and change, they circled back. 77 seconds. Exactly. That's when I noticed the label on the wall near the speaker. Checklist, sound loop 77 seconds. No explanation, just the piece title and duration, but someone nearby, another attendee holding a sketchpad, said under their breath, "That's the round trip time, stage left to stage right, standard rehearsal path." I didn't know if that was true or just something said to impress someone else, but I wrote it down anyway. As the sound loop continued, people began to cluster near the halo tag's plinth. One girl in a mesh hoodie whispered, "This is it, right? The pen drive." Another guy, holding an overstuffed camera bag, rolled his eyes. "It's literally art. It's telling you there's no access. That's the whole point. But if it doesn't mean anything, why show it? Because showing the absence is part of the meaning, or it's proof they're hiding something." They were standing so close I could hear their breath hitch. A security guard wandered over, gave them a tired smile, and asked if everything was okay. They nodded. The guard nodded back as if he'd seen this conversation play out 100 times before. I stepped away. I didn't want to listen to another fight about whether the art was real or just performance. That wasn't the question anymore. On the wall next to the plinth was a small panel of text. I read it slowly, 3 times. "Some things become albums. Others stay in notebooks. Some drafts get buried, others get reworked. Some belong only to the room that made them. There's no right answer, but there is consent." And at the bottom, one final line: "To witness something does not always mean to possess it." The word witness stood out to me, not in the creepy ritual way people sometimes twist it into, but in the actual sense, as in to be present, to acknowledge, not to own. Behind one of the projectors, I saw a small sticker, just a circular dot, yellow with a faint outline in gray, the size of a coin. At first, I thought it was a forgotten label or equipment mark, but then I saw another one, red this time, near a bundle of speaker cables. Another one on the side of the display case. They were quiet, almost decorative, but familiar. Each sticker had a faint alphanumeric code, like the file names I'd seen in the Halo Tags folder: 7F-A9, 2C-14, just like before. Inventory dots? Maybe. Markers? Also maybe. I filmed them anyway. By the time I left the gallery, the street was already darker than I remembered. It felt like I'd been inside for hours, even though my phone said just 43 minutes had passed. Outside, just beyond the steps, someone was leaning against the wall, talking to a group of undergrad students. A blogger. I recognized them from a previous panel on music metadata. They were showing a phone screen around, low enough that it looked casual, but deliberate enough that you couldn't miss it. On the screen, a file tree, labeled folders and subfolders. P_heatmap. Chap. Arc _fin _Q4XXX. House _0_11. Wait. The blogger laughed and said, "It's all fan art." But supposedly someone in production said those names came up once. I didn't ask where, or who, or when. I didn't want to know. But later that night, after I got home, I opened my camera roll to review the B-roll footage from the exhibit. Just out of curiosity, I paused on one still frame of the sticker behind the projector. The code on it read, _7F-A9. Same as the thumbnail from the kiosk folder. Same checksum tail. I blinked, looked again. Same. Someone had gone to the trouble of copying a random, meaningless file name from a locked archive and printed it onto a sticker. For what? Authenticity? Continuity? Or maybe, as a joke? Or maybe it was the same file, a real one, just resurfaced, again and again, in different clothes. I scrolled to the wall text one more time and read the last line again. To witness something does not always mean to possess it. But it didn't stop people from trying. Chapter 5. PR_heatmap zip. Zip. The whiteboard in my room had started off as a joke, just a place to dump fragments, dates, egg notes, scrawled in permanent marker. At first it was funny to pretend I was solving something, but now it looked like a fever chart of the internet's attention span. In the middle of it, the part I kept circling back to, was 3 words written in red. er_heatmap.zip. The file didn't exist, not that I'd seen anyway, but it showed up in the fake file tree that Blogger flashed outside the gallery, right there between ipark_fin_q4.xsls and house_0_11.wav. I hadn't given it much thought at the time, just another fan-made prop to stir the pot. But after a few days of reading, listening, and sitting way too long in front of a screen, I started wondering what a file like that would actually contain. So I built it myself. Not the real thing, obviously. A thought experiment, a scaffold. I called it If It Existed. I drew 5 boxes on the whiteboard, each one labeled with a moment I remembered the internet catching fire about something Beyonce adjacent. Not scandals exactly, just public heat. Times when every feed felt like it was vibrating. Box 1, Dubai, January 2023. A private concert to launch a luxury hotel in the United Arab Emirates. The photos were everywhere. Gold dresses, firework finales, tight security. But so was the backlash. People questioning how an artist who'd built a queer-themed album would perform in a country with restrictive laws on LGBTQ+ rights. The debate had been loud, messy. No official statement ever came, and eventually the story faded. Box 2, the Tiffany diamond. From back in 2021, when Beyonce became the first black woman to wear the infamous yellow diamond in an ad campaign. The visuals were striking, but the diamond's history, mined under brutal conditions in colonial South Africa, sparked another round of questions about power, about legacy, about what it means to become part of an institution you once challenged. Box 3, Ivy Park, her Adidas line. Sales struggles, clearance issues, a quiet split in 2023. There were rumors of missed projections, unsold stock, quietly shelved releases, no press tour. Just an ending. Box 4, the Renaissance leak. 2 days early. Physical copies dropped in Europe before the official date, but instead of spreading it online, most fans refused to listen. The community self-policed, flooding hashtags with album countdowns and memes. When the real drop came, Beyonce thanked her fans for their love and protection. Box 5, sampling disputes. There were a few. Most people remembered the Khalees interpolation debate, how her voice was used briefly and then removed after backlash. Others remembered newer rumblings about whether certain tracks had cleared all their rights. Nothing that ever led to lawsuits, just noise. That was the timeline. Now came the question. If PR_heatmap.zip were real, what would it track? I imagined a slide deck, nothing flashy, just gray and white PowerPoint slides. Each controversy broken into categories: region, sentiment volume, influencer hotspots, containment tactic. Like a storm report. Each one would have a color-coded graph showing how fast the story spread, where it hit hardest, and which voices moved it along. One slide might be titled, Dubai, Day 2, Instagram outpaces Twitter by 3-1. Another might show, Sentiment shift, 48 hours post-launch, yellow diamond keyword saturation. I added sticky notes beside each box on my board. Dubai, silence strategy, full lock, fan-led course correction. Tiffany, legacy prestige framing, no direct response. Ivy Park, end of contract rollover, off-cycle conclusion, minimal PR run. Renaissance leak, community shield effect, positive amplification, fan management success. Sampling fuss, content trims, quiet edits, no public defense. And then at the center of the board, I wrote the phrase, slide 17, do nothing, because that's what fascinated me the most. The idea that for all the noise the internet makes, sometimes the smartest move is no move at all. That silence can be the most deliberate strategy. That sometimes artists and their teams just wait. Let the moment burn itself out. Trust that the audience will either forget or forgive. I stood back and stared at the whole thing. This fake file, this PR_heatmap, wasn't a scandal map. It was a weather report, and silence wasn't absence, it was planning. That's when the message came in. A short clip of B at a recent poetry reading, posted by someone in the crowd. Not viral, not even properly captioned, just a shaky phone video from the back row of a tiny theater. She was standing on a carpeted stage under a single bulb, reading from a small, bent notebook. Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. The room was listening. I played the clip 3 times. The poem was about carrying things, not burdens exactly, but weight. What fits in my pocket doesn't always fit in the world, she said. Some shapes are meant for silence, some names don't survive search bars. Inheritance is not the crown, but the headache. I paused the clip, then rewound. Some names don't survive search bars. I didn't need to explain that line, it explained itself. There was more truth in that single sentence than in all the viral threads combined. I turned back to the whiteboard. Everything I'd mapped, the PR spikes, the social graphs, the imagined CSVs, was real in structure. But the reason it mattered wasn't because it proved anything. It mattered because the world was always trying to take public figures, especially black women in power, and break them down into parts. The business, the controversy, the applause, the silence. And somewhere in all that dissection, the person got lost. That's what PR_heatmap really was, if it existed. A map of where the world shouted and where it chose not to listen. I sat down at my desk and opened my inbox. There was a new message from a username I didn't recognize, just a string of numbers and letters. No greeting, no context. Just a small graphic file in one sentence. Color, 7, FA9 equals amber. Shape, 2C14 equals glass. I clicked the file. It was a chart. A decoder, if you believed in that sort of thing. 2 columns. One labeled color mood, the other shape code. Amber, glass, lacquer, cable, haze. Each one tied to a hex code. Each code matching a suffix I'd seen in those old Halo tag dash file names. Which meant the system wasn't sorting by topic. It wasn't even sorting by scandal. It was sorting by feeling. If the checksum tails weren't clearance statuses or version tags, but emotional indexes, then everything changed. PR_heatmap.zip, if it existed, wasn't an exposure file. It was a reflection file. A mood board of storms, not to be decoded, just understood. Or maybe not even that. Maybe just witnessed. Chapter 6, House_011, Wabway. I got the file at 2:41 a.m. It showed up in my inbox with no subject, no sender name. Just a string of random letters, like a keyboard smash. The only thing in the message body was a short sentence. It's not music. It's room tone, legal, and an attachment, house_0:11.wave. I stared at it for a while before downloading it. The name was too perfect, the kind of perfect that made you immediately suspicious, but curiosity beat hesitation. I clicked. 10 minutes long, exactly, file size just over 10 megabytes. No cover image, no embedded metadata, nothing fancy. When I dragged it into Audacity, it looked like a flat line with barely any peaks, just a low, consistent hum. I put on my headphones, hit play, and waited. What I heard was what you'd expect from a room tone file. the kind audio engineers use to patch silence between clips. A quiet space. HVAC system somewhere in the background, maybe a fridge, a faint buzzing hum. Nothing scary. No voice, no music, no cues. Just there. But after the second minute, I started hearing something else. A tiny sound, not loud, more like a soft pip, not random, too clean for that. I glanced at the time counter, 2:11, then another one at 2:22, then again at 2:33. Exactly 11 seconds apart. I paused the playback, rewound to the start, played it again, this time watching the waveform scroll as it played. It was there, a microscopic vertical line in the track, almost invisible unless you zoomed all the way in. Every 11 seconds, like a thread sewn through the silence. Click, 11 seconds, click, again. It didn't sound like a metronome, it was too faint for that, more like a machine ping or a digital tick layered deep underneath everything else. You couldn't hear it unless you were looking for it, but once you knew where it was, you couldn't unhear it. I started checking timestamps. Minute 0, 11 seconds. Minute 1, 11 seconds. Every time that little pip, watermark, maybe. Glitch, maybe. But then I remembered the 77-second loop from the gallery, the sound piece called Checklist that played its erratic metronome rhythm in a pattern that only repeated once every 77 seconds. I opened my notes from that day and laid the intervals over the file. It didn't match perfectly, not every beat aligned, but some of them did. The click at 3:19, the metronome snap at 3:19. The click at 6:27, the loop restart at 6:27. Coincidence? Probably. Craft? Could be. I didn't know what to think, so I exported a visual spectrogram of the file, a color map of frequency over time. It was mostly blue-gray, flat lines, nothing unusual, but those clicks lit up as thin green spikes across the silence, equally spaced, regular. At one point, I noticed something else. 3 small bumps in the waveform. Not the 11-second clicks, but irregular jolts, like the mic had been touched. Not voice, not music, not even mechanical, just 3 little spikes. He zoomed in and marked them. Bump 1, minute 1:44. Bump 2, minute 5:29. Bump 3, minute 8:03. They weren't evenly spaced. They didn't follow a rhythm, but I couldn't stop staring at them. I opened my Halo tag notes again. The checksum codes, the decoder graphics someone had sent me. The one that said, color, 7FA9 equals amber. Shape, 2C14 equals glass. The bumps didn't match those codes exactly, but if you indexed them using the decoder time tag to code, then code to tag, you ended up with something strange. The first bump lined up with H, the second with A, the third with L. The final 11-second ping after the third bump landed near a watermark that matched O. I laughed out loud. It was ridiculous. It felt like finding faces in clouds, like hearing messages in white noise, but I couldn't help it. Once I saw it, it stuck. Hello. The name of a song, the name of a file, the name of a folder, the name of the whole mood board system. Was it coincidence? Was it someone playing with me? Or was this how the entire project worked, by creating enough soft patterns that the brain filled in the rest? I posted a question in one of the Discord threads. If a file was watermarked every 11 seconds, but also included trace mic bumps, could those be unintentional or encoded? And replied instantly, audio pareidolia is real. Don't get lost in it. Another user chimed in, no way that's an accident. Halo is the system. She's been tagging drafts this way since 2022. Neither answer helped. At this point, the file had been downloaded by at least 5 different forums. Some claimed it was recorded in a hotel suite during the Renaissance tour stop in Marfa. Others swore it was an art school prank submitted to an experimental sound class in Copenhagen. A few called it fan fiction. One person claimed it had been in circulation privately for months, but never posted publicly because of consent concerns. No one could agree, but no one deleted it either. The next day, I got another message. Same encrypted address as before. Drafts deserve rooms. Attached was a screenshot of a calendar invite. No sender, no RSVP info, just a simple event block. Poetry reading, 7:00 p.m. Venue, small room, Northside Center. And under it, one line in the notes. Private performance by B, not a reveal, a meditation on privacy. No link, no stream, just a time and a place, an invitation to listen, or not. I stared at the screen for a while. The room tone file was still open on my desktop, paused at minute 7, the little bumps still marked in red, the spectrogram still glowing like the memory of a heartbeat. And I thought again about that phrase from the gallery. To witness something does not always mean to possess it. Maybe this whole thing, the pen drive, the folders, the file names, wasn't about what we could find. Maybe it was about learning how to look without trying to take. Maybe some drafts aren't meant for download. Chapter 7. The reading. The room was smaller than I expected. When people said small venue, I had pictured something intimate but polished. Velvet seats, a soft stage light, someone managing a mic. But this place, it was more like a rehearsal space. Black painted walls, exposed pipes, one row of folding chairs against 3 sides of the room. No stage, just floor space, scuffed from years of shifting chairs and dragged cables. There were maybe 30 of us, maybe less. A hand-scrawled sign on the door said private reading, RSVP only, and underlined the word quiet 3 times. No phones, no video. Just sit, listen, and leave. I didn't know what to expect from B. Not really. I had seen videos, sure, snippets of her on stage with her mom, talking to dancers during rehearsals, nodding at timing cues. But I'd never seen her like this. Alone. Just herself. She walked into the room without an introduction. No stage name, no announcement, just walked in holding a small beige notebook and a glass of water. No music, no preamble. She opened the notebook and read. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The room bent toward her the way a field bends in the wind. Soft, total, without force. The poem was short, maybe 4 minutes total, but I remember every line. The drawer. Some drawers open too easily, the kind that slide without sound, like a secret that wants to spill itself. Others stick, swollen from time and humidity, or the wrong hand pulling too hard. But there is one drawer, in the middle of the house, the one that keeps the structure right. It doesn't hold anything important, not anymore, but it has to stay closed, so the house doesn't fall. You know the one, the drawer that hums, it in its silence, the one we build around, not to hide, as to hold. She closed the notebook after that and didn't say anything for a moment. Then she looked up and nodded, as if giving the room permission to exhale. People clapped, but softly, not out of politeness, more like gratitude. There wasn't a stage, so there was no backstage. She just stepped to the side and took a seat near the wall, still holding the notebook in her lap. Then someone raised their hand. A young guy, maybe 20, wearing a laminated pass around his neck that looked like it had been reused for 3 different events. He didn't wait to be called on. Sorry, I know you said it's not a Q&A, but can I ask if the drawer is, real? Like, is this about the pen drive? There it was. The whole room stiffened, but B didn't flinch. She smiled. Not politely, not annoyed, just like someone who had already made peace with the question. Drafts deserve rooms, she said. Some rooms aren't public. That was it. No lecture, no scolding, just the boundary, stated clearly, without anger. My lord. Some people nodded, others exchanged glances. A few opened their phones the moment they were outside. Followed one girl down the stairs as she whispered into her front-facing camera. You guys, I was just at the B reading. She literally confirmed the pen drive. She said some rooms aren't public. Like, that's a direct acknowledgement. She's telling us it's real. I wanted to interrupt, tell her that wasn't what was said, but I didn't. Because it didn't matter. The machine had already started moving. Headlines began appearing before I even made it to the train. Fan accounts posting slides with glitter fonts that said, "Be confirmed secret drive," followed by screenshots of that one sentence. No context, no poem, just the part that fed the fire. By the time I got home, the reading had been reshaped into something it wasn't. People who hadn't been in the room were already analyzing her tone, her posture, the color of the notebook she held. Someone had even posted a thread suggesting that the drawer in the poem was a metaphor for a deleted audio file from 2022. It never stops, the appetite for proof. A friend of mine, Mia from way back in the doc editing program, sent me a clip from outside the venue, grainy footage from a phone held just low enough to avoid suspicion. He showed B leaving the building, tote bag over one shoulder, water glass in hand. At one point, she bent to pick something off the ground, and for half a second, the corner of a USB drive flashed from a lanyard loop near the edge of her bag. That was all. No labels, no branding, no confirmation that it even belonged to her. But it was enough. The clip blew up. People slowed it down, frame by frame, debating whether the shape matched common drive models. Someone matched it to a limited edition Samsung USB from a press kit issued 3 years ago. Someone else claimed it was a disguised wireless mic receiver. The hashtags came fast. Halo Drive, Drafts Deserve Rooms, The Drawer, The Chop Shop. By the end of the night, fan theories were already crystallizing. Some said the pen drive held the PR_heatmap decks, slide after slide of celebrity damage control, waiting to be exposed. Others swore it was full of family videos, emotional footage not meant for the public but priceless all the same. A few said it contained unfinished songs, that the Halo tag file stems we'd seen were just file stems for a secret EP. And somewhere in that cloud of projections, the truth, whatever it had once been, was overridden. Outside, as I walked home, I passed a group of teenagers sitting on the curb, eating fast food and talking with wild urgency. He has to leak it eventually. What if she never does? Then it becomes like sacred, like the drawer itself. They laughed, argued. One of them pulled up an edited graphic on their phone, a mock cover of an imaginary album titled Rooms That Don't Open, with a glowing USB at the center. I didn't take a picture, I didn't ask to record, I didn't even write their names down. Sometimes the room isn't yours. Sometimes you just pass through. And that's enough. Chapter 8. What we chose not to open. The board was falling apart. Strings drooped like tired vines. Sticky notes curled at the corners. Marker lines had faded into dry outlines of questions I didn't need answered anymore. What once looked like an investigation now felt like a memory of one. I pulled a few pins down but left some up, enough to remember the shape it had taken. Once. The checksum calendar was still taped near the center. I laid it flat on my desk next to a timeline I'd printed earlier that week. Just a list of public events. Tour stops, album releases, school fundraisers, a museum gala, the launch of a scholarship program. The dates stretched over 2 years. The checksum codes, those odd suffixes on the halo tag files, lined up beside them. Or they were supposed to, but they didn't match. Not really. Some were off by a few days. Some didn't match at all. A few landed in months where nothing public had happened. No announcements, no photos, no fan sightings. Just gaps. And that's when I realized something I should have seen from the beginning. Rumors crave patterns, but life resists them. He said. We're trained to believe that everything lines up, that every piece of noise fits into a master track if only we scrub long enough. But that's not how people move. Not artists, not families, not anyone. I looked over at the message that had kicked off this whole trail, the first RSVP email, the odd file path. /starling/blue/private/USB. I had followed that trail for weeks, through poems, galleries, rumors, screenshots, and audio files. But the pen drive? The one the title promised? Never surfaced, never leaked, never cracked open. Instead, something else happened. I started seeing a different kind of pattern, one that wasn't hidden in files, but in restraint. There was the hand that hovered over a folder at the gallery kiosk, choosing not to click. The girl outside the poetry reading, lifting her phone, then lowering it again. The friend who captured a blurry clip of B walking away, but didn't zoom in. The blogger who shared a fake file tree and then said plainly, "It's fan art." Sitting here now, with my camera off, my inbox open, and a plain silver USB drive on my desk, still in its plastic wrap. Opened it. It's blank, I know that. But I labeled it anyway. Halloo. Not because I think it holds anything, but because I needed something physical to mark the boundary. A reminder that not every drawer needs to be pulled open, that sometimes the act of not pressing play is the real story. I opened my email one last time. Same address as before. No subject. Just one line. Starling, flock returns. Attached was a photo. Not blurry, not secret, just a bookshelf. 3 rows of books, neatly arranged. On the spine, small halo tags stickered. Colors, shapes, hex codes. No titles, no authors. Just a quiet system. It wasn't a code, it was organization. A way of tending to memory, of keeping drafts where they belong. And that's the thing, isn't it? The reveal in the title, what's hidden inside her secret pen drive, was never going to be a Dropbox link. It wasn't a scandal. Or a breach. It was a sentence said out loud by a young artist who told us, kindly, drafts deserve rooms. And we as an audience had to decide what kind of room we want it to be. Do we need to see everything, own everything, break into every drawer, just because we know it's there? Or can we sit with the not knowing? Can we let someone else keep the key? I don't have answers, just this desk, this story, and a small, unopened USB with nothing on it, except a label. Hello. I whisper it aloud, not for drama, just to remember how it sounds when you leave something untouched. Because maybe drafts deserve rooms, and maybe so do we.